Welcome to video 1-7, solve a quadratic equation by completing the square. First, some background information. If I've got x plus a squared, that equals x squared plus 2ax plus a squared. By adding this term here is called completing the square. All right, so what we're going to be doing is trying to get what's called the perfect square trinomial, so we can go backwards and make that be a binomial squared. So we won't have this to begin with. And just to let you know how this works, notice if I take half of this term, half of 2a is a, and if I square it, I get that term. So whenever I've got a perfect square trinomial, half of this and then squaring it is how I arrive at that last term. So I've got a big saying in class, half and square. If you know those three words, you're well on the way to solving quadratic equations by completing the square. All right, so let's go over an example now. So we will solve x squared minus 10x plus 1 equals 0. All right, the very first thing that I do is this only works with a lead coefficient of 1, by the way, so we'll keep it basic. I take this term and bring it to the other side. So I'm going to make this be x squared minus 10x plus something equals negative 1. All I did was I subtracted 1 from each side. And then I just I call that a magic box. There's nothing magical about it. What I want to do now is fill that box with the correct number that will give me a perfect square trinomial. And the correct number is found by saying the phrase half and square. It's so important, I'm going to write it down. Half and square. So half of that, and then square it. So half of negative 10 is negative 5, and negative 5 squared is positive 25. You'll always get a positive number here because a negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a positive. So half and squared gave me 25. So what I'm going to do is insert a 25 there, but if I add 25 to the left-hand side of the equal sign, I must add it to the right-hand side to maintain the balance. All right, once you do that, all you've got to do is recognize you've got a perfect square trinomial. You know you do because you forced it to be. Then you've got to go back and make it be a binomial squared. So it's going to be x, that operation, and there's two ways of getting it. Either half of that or the square root of that. Half of negative 10 is negative 5. The square root of 25 is 5. Again, making sure to keep those signs be the same. Okay, so we've got x minus 5 squared equals 24. So now I'm back to that previous lesson, solve quadratic equations by taking square roots. I've got the square term isolated, so I will take the square root of this side and take plus or minus the square root of that side, and I'll get x minus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 24. Add 5 right in front. X equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 24. Again, just simplifying that, x equals 5 plus or minus rad 4, rad 6. Rad 4 I happen to know is 2. I'll write this over here. So x equals 5 plus or minus 2 rad 6. And again, on my quizzes and tests, I want two different answer blanks. X sub 1 and x sub 2. And I usually put the smaller number first. So x sub 1 equals 5 minus 2 rad 6, and x sub 2 equals 5 plus 2 rad 6. And those are my two solutions. So there you have it. how to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square.